life and experiences, they've humbled me. Like, you can only control what you can control, man. Like, you guys know how it is. Swimming is a fine sport, and it could be my best day and somebody else's worst day, or it could be vice versa. So making the team, representing my country, cheering on my teammates, doing the best I can do in that water, and wherever it ends up, you know what I'm saying, we throwing a party regardless.
Welcome back to the Social Kick Podcast. I'm Brian Lundquist. We got a full crew: Dr. John Mullen, Luke Paddington, and Paralympic swimmer Jamal from the SwimUpHill organization. Hill, what's up, Jamal? How you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Super honored to be on the show today. Thank you all for having me.
Well, we've been talking for a while. Actually, one thing that we just learned was, did you go to high school up here by us in the Bay Area?
So no, so Junipero Serra High School is actually a very popular Catholic school name. Oh. I did not go to Junipero Serra in the Bay. There's also Junipero Serra down here, and I think like not Mission Viejo, but someplace around there. I went to the Junipero Serra in Gardena, California, so very close to Inglewood.
Yeah, we were going, shoot, he went to the same school as Tom Brady, man. No.
Tom Brady wishes he went to my school.
That's right. I like it.
Oh, well, shoot, man, you've been doing a lot of really great work with your foundation and making a name for, I guess the swimming community, abilities and disabilities. And, just candidly, there's a whole lot that I think the casual swimming community doesn't know or understand about Paralympic swimming, about classifications and that sort of stuff. So honestly, I really was hoping that they might be able to just share and talk about first, like, what it is, how would you describe your ability? And also if you could just give us a landscape on how the framework works with classifications. Absolutely.
If I may, I'm going to jump on that right away, I promise you, but I have to highlight this. So real quick, my nonprofit is not a foundation. That's an important delineation in language. Foundations, they give away money, they bequest funds. What we do is we provide services. So we're actually just, 501c3, we are a nonprofit, but not a foundation. So that's it. I
appreciate that.
Thanks for clarifying.
No problem. It's all love. Give me one more time that question, please.
Okay, so just wanted to know if you could give us an outline of, first, how would you describe your abilities, and also the architecture for the classifications within para swimming and kind of where you fall on within that framework.
For sure. So number one, I have a type of disease called Charcot Marie Tooth. So it's 3 last names of the French scientists who discovered this disease. CMT is the acronym. It affects probably about 1 in 2,500 Americans. And it affects my peripheral nerves. So that's just a fancy way of saying my lower extremities. So from my elbow to my fingertip, I have about 30% nerve conductivity. And from my kneecaps to the soles of my feet, I have 0% nerve conductivity. To put that into perspective terms, from your elbows to your knees, you have 8 reflex zones. Okay, so like one common one is the doctor hits your knee and the leg kicks up. None of those work on me. Those are all non-starters. Let's see. Another one is that kind of helps people imagine it. You guys definitely know this, right? So we all know the Kill Bill franchise, right? Uma Thurman, right? Comes out of the coma, and it may be the first one. I think she comes out of the coma. She's in the back of the yellow truck outside of the hospital.
Yep.
She's talking to her big toe, like, wiggle, big toe, wiggle. So for me, that conversation happens all the time, only the big toe never starts to wiggle. So that's kind of what nerve conductivity means in the peripherals. My brain is sending signals to these extremities, but it's like a feedback loop. It never makes it to where it is supposed to go. So does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. Yeah, it does. But how does that impact, I guess, how you walk?
For sure. So impacting how I walk, again, kind of visual that I provide to people is, imagine a double above knee amputee on prosthetic limbs, only my limbs are flesh and blood, right? They're actually not prosthetics. So it's like I'm walking on my knees at all times. That's what the sensation is for me. I've been living with this since I was 10 years old. I'm 26 now, so 16 years. I've developed some pretty impressive compensation patterns. It is one of those types of, disabilities that doesn't fall into the classic stigma of disability, so it's considered almost an invisible disability. I've developed these massive muscles on my lower back, on my lumbar region that help me, stand erect, that help me move, that help me walk. I trip a lot, even with 16 years of practice. I stumble a lot. I drop things a lot. I don't play with my phone in bed because I've smacked my face too many times. I drink very quickly because too many times have I dropped a glass out of my hand. So just knock it down and then put it down. And in the pool, really, especially with me being a sprinter, my lower legs are really kind of just a drag. They just really increase my drag at this point. Mm-hmm. Like I'm kicking from my glutes on through my hamstrings, but everything from my knee down is really drag. I have quite frankly, a pretty poor start. We even had to get creative with how I dive off the blocks just because I'm not able to generate really any like upward lift along with forward propulsion off the blocks in that compromised state of bending over. 6'4" guy, I've never dunked a basketball, so that kind of puts it into perspective there. I'm just not able to, get the leg power from just coming off my knees. And then with the hand placement again, where, this is a swimming podcast, so we can talk. Yeah, when that stroke comes around and really trying to find that placement, especially at high speeds, I tend to get like seizures in my hands. It's very difficult to catch water in the front of the stroke, and just and keep good form, like what's so important. So a lot of things, but that's a snapshot of it.
Yeah.
Well, I was just gonna say that do you forget about your ability in the water more than on land? Like, does the water help? You just described all the ways that you feel it and it inhibits you, but at the same time, does the water help the other moments really just feel Jamal?
Yeah.
Isn't that what you mean?
I do know what you mean. The water is definitely therapeutic. Right. As far as individuals with this type of neuropathy going, I think almost all individuals in the disability space, whether it be cognitive or physical, handicaps, the water is a therapeutic element. Most people I see with Charcot Marie Tooth who are involved in water sports have retained some amount of their walking ability. The average person with Charcot Marie Tooth actually wears metal leg braces like Forrest Gump or is wheelchair bound for most of the time. So 100%, I think the water, helps with the connection, that the proprioception aspect, kind of being surrounded and engulfed in the, in the viscosity, right? Definitely not air. In terms of like increased ability though,
no,
especially I'm doing it at a high level, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm doing it at a high level, so it's frustrating. It's frustrating as double hockey, man. Like it's frustrating as heck.
Well, Jamal, I want to come back to. I really want to get in deep on technical and talk to you about technique and some of the things that you've employed. I think it's fascinating. But let's hit on the classifications though before we forget. So what's sort of the outline of classifications in para?
Yeah, for sure. That's a great question. So there's classifications S1 all the way through S14. So the lower regions, and again, bear with me here. I'm not a classification specialist. So if anyone hears this and they're like, "You're wrong, Jamal. This is a general, right?" So the lower classifications, I think it's like 1 to 4 is gonna be mostly like invalids. So people who are maybe like quadriplegics, which is impressive, massively impressive. You know what I'm saying? Quadriplegics, people with major spinal cord injuries, who just have, pretty super limited motion. As we kind of move through the 5 to 6 range, we move into dwarfism athletes who have that. When we kind of get into the 7 to 10 range, that's going to be athletes with varying degrees of physical impairment. So it may be a hand deficiency, a lower leg deficiency, someone like myself dealing with neuropathy. When we get from 11 to, I think it is about 13, that's when you're dealing with the visually impaired for the most part.
Mm-hmm.
And then classification 14 is going to be some type of cognitive impairment.
Okay. Thank you. And then what's the concentration like for the athletes, kind of in competing in those? Are there like really competitive classifications and some that maybe have fewer participants?
For sure. I think, I'm not a statistician on this. I know a lot of stats, but admittedly, I don't know too many stats on this. I would definitely say in terms of entertainment, though, and what I think a lot of people are able to really engage in, it's all amazing. But I think the most engagement probably comes from, the ranges S9 and S10. Like, that's kind of like the hot seat of competition. Even that said, like, there are people who are quadriplegics that swim way better and way faster than lots of people I know who have full access to all of their limbs and functions.
Yeah. Okay. And then what events are you swimming? Is there a wide range of events, or like give us
that's a great question, man. And this is kind of where the Paralympics gets it starts to get confusing and convoluted. And this is a marketing problem that I think they're starting to solve. Obviously on the Olympic side, right, it's same range of events, right? But only there's a male and female split, right? In America, 2 athletes go for each event for the men, 2 athletes go for the women. And the Paralympic circuit, same range of events. However, every category does not have an opportunity to compete on what would be the Paralympic level, right? Happens every 4 years following the Olympics for that category, right? So let's just say an S10 athlete may only have an opportunity to race on the Paralympic level in the 50-meter freestyle, not the 100-meter freestyle, the 100-meter backstroke, the 200-meter butterfly, the 400 IM. And then an athlete in the S6 category may be able to compete in the 100-meter freestyle, right? And the 400-meter free. So it's kind of a shuffleboard as to where you fall and then what races are eligible for the actual Paralympic Games that quad.
Why is it structured that way? Do you know?
I don't know how. I don't really know, but I would think just because, like, dude, it would be too much. It would be literally too overwhelming, right? We're talking about 14 categories, right? Even if we just take the base, right, times 4, right? Because there's 2 men, 2 women, times every event. Like, the games will go on forever at this point, right? So I think it's just too much. It's too much to keep track of. And I think that's it. It's just too much.
What event do you not have access to that you would love to be able to compete in?
Oh man, well, this quad I don't have access in my current category. I got reclassified in 2019, which is another conversation.
Yeah,
but currently I'm in the S10 category, so I don't have access to the 100-meter freestyle as an individual event.
What? That's your sport. That's your race.
Yeah. So I only have access to the 50-meter free, and that's what led me to pick up the 100-meter backstroke because I have access to that.
But why? What is their rationale for that?
Again, like that's the thing. Like there's no way that every class could have an opportunity to race every single event, right? Like let's just say there are. You guys know, like roughly how many events are there on a sheet? How many events? Like. How many regions?
13 events. There are 13 events. But
there are 13 events. So it's 13 times 14 times 4.
You have it in master swimming. In master swimming, you will have that. When you go to master swimmers, you have it by age group, 5-year gaps from 25 all the way to 100.
That's true. At the same pace, master swimming is not 85 countries.
Yep, and some of these countries are, providing funding and things like that too. So all I'm sure feeds into it. One thing you mentioned, exactly, politics. And speaking of politics, classifications.
Yeah,
maybe, you can dive in as much as you want about your own classification, but I think people maybe learning about how athletes are classified would help them. I've done classifications, and there is subjectivity to it. People think it's very concrete. Oh, well, you have this, you're in that. That's not like that, especially with neurological conditions.
I think especially with neurological conditions. Let me just start by saying, Dr. John, you just said you've been a part of it. So to be a classifier, whatever you would, label that, is not an easy job. Okay. You know what I'm saying? Like, people are there, they're doing the best they can be. But at the same time, they're people. And in my humble personal opinion, like, I think people take a look at me and it's just hard to believe that anything's wrong with me. Like, obviously, for me to be able to eligible to compete on the Paralympic circuit, I had to go through all the lab tests, right? I had to go through I had to run the treadmill like the rats. I had to, go through the maze. That plus, like, I had to go through the experience of, dealing with the disability. I've been fully paralyzed from the neck down for times. I felt what it was like to have full access to my body, and then to have 13 years where, I'm working with what I've got. So originally I was classified as an S9 athlete. And we went to trials, or, leading into 2019 before the Pan American Games. I was reclassified. I think if I could say something to somebody like myself, it would be that in order to have the best chance at a fair classification, you need to leave your pride at the door. And that's something that I had to learn, because I was living, in the proverbial closet with my disability all the way up until the year before. So for a decade, nobody knew that I was living with a disability. I never told anyone. We never talked about it. And, I developed these compensation patterns. And whenever someone would call me out on it, I would figure out a way to never be called out on it again. So I kind of call it this illusion of movement. Like, I can make it look like I can do certain things that I'm really not doing. Like, I may look like I'm doing a calf raise, but I'm really like doing a back bend and getting my heels off the ground. So that was something that I had to learn. I was new to the system, and I think that just kind of my ego of just, I was still dealing with, like, I'm not really a Paralympic athlete. And so I think that kind of led to me being reclassified in a higher bracket. But at the same pace, I'll be reclassified here, hopefully in Texas in April. Mm-hmm. More humility, just kind of like not faking anything, just like being transparent with your ability, because that's the only way that these people are going to be able to do the best job they can do.
How did you, or who helped you get you to embrace that? And how do you feel once you did?
Yeah, for sure. So that's going to be my coach, Wilma Wong. So we got together in 2017. I dropped out of college a year before. I swam with Trojan, swam with Dave, swam with John. And then I met Wilma. We trained together for a year. And, out of 12 years, she's the first person. She's like, yo, Jamal, I know you got this dream of going to the Olympics. That's not looking too good. But on another note, I look at the way that you dive. I look at the way you swim. I look at the way you pick up your legs when you get out of the car. And you remind me of some of my cerebral palsy patients from the past. And at that point in time, that was the first time anyone had ever said anything like that to me. So massive relief in that moment. I'm like, yo, that's crazy. I actually have this neuropathy. And I broke it down to her, and she said at that time, well, listen, unless we can cure it, there's no cure for this, but unless we can cure it, you may want to start looking into the Paralympics. And immediately it went from relief, thank God somebody sees me, to like, don't ever say that to me again. There's nothing wrong with me. Now you're challenging this identity that I've come to grow into. And so early 2018, when I first joined the Paralympics, when this was first brought to me, it was a non-starter. I wasn't interested. I felt like it was disrespectful. Prior to that, had anyone asked me, are all athletes and people created equally, whether they be para or fully able-bodied, like most of us in this world, right? Whether it be race or ability or socioeconomic class, we would say, of course they are, all the way up until you actually get grouped into that area where you don't really want to be. Then it's like, oh, no, that's not me. I'm not a part of that. And how you really feel comes out. So I got put into my own shoes, and it was a humbling experience.
How did you get introduced to swimming?
Yeah,
that's a great question, man. 10 months old. So I've had, at this point, 2 10-year stints in swimming.
Wow.
So from 10 months old to 10 years old, I went from Mommy and Me all the way through swim lessons, all the way through swim team. 10 years old, Charcot Marie Tooth kicks in, bad dislocated shoulder, paralysis, things like that. Stop swimming at 10, pick it back up at the age of 16 as a sophomore in high school, and now I'm 26. So from 10 months to 10 years old, and then from 16 to 26.
So I'm imagining your comment about saying that people in your life didn't know about your disability, and so does that mean that they just thought that you tripped a lot?
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly it.
So when you were in high school and you picked swimming back up at that point, was it you were functioning and part of like swim team and everything, but no classification, no para participation at all?
No, I didn't get introduced or involved with anything para until I was, I don't know, maybe like 23. So until like maybe 3 years ago. All through high school, I competed D3. Like you guys were balling out at D1. I went to D3 swim school. Not to say that D3 doesn't have some fast people, like but definitely all throughout, my competitive scholastic career, nobody knew about that. I was just giving it my all. If somebody would make a comment, like especially even when I was at Trojan, the coaches, they're looking at my physique. They're like, man, like, why can't you bust out a 20-point in yards? You should be able to do that. Maybe it's just muscle tightness. Maybe you don't stretch enough. Maybe this, maybe that, but obviously without the context of being kind of in a disabled community or having experienced athletes like that, you would have no way. You can't know what you don't know, right?
Yeah. One thing I'd like to clarify, because I think this happens a lot where the diagnosis isn't right away. Especially like you said, you looked healthy, you look strong. Oh, it's just tight muscles, this and that. And I'm sure you bringing up these things as a young kid may not have been received well, or maybe you internalized it a little. Was CMT diagnosed at age 10, or did it take a while to get to that diagnosis?
Oh, no, I was diagnosed at age 10.
Okay, got it.
It was hard diagnosis. So, my mom and dad obviously knew it's a hereditary disease, so it's passed down on my mom's side. Some of my uncles also suffered from it, even some of my cousins, so they knew. But with my parents, me as a 10-year-old, internally, I've had this experience, right? So, like, whether or not I have a definition or a name to call it, I know how it was and I know how it is now, right? But with my parents, it was never a conversation. It was like, I came out of this temporary state of paralysis, what I describe to people as an inflamed state. And I was left with, this neurological, right, impairment. And they just never talked about it. It was one of those things like, you're better now. I don't want anyone judging you. I don't want anyone else to be putting you in a box. I don't want you to be looking this up and seeing this is all people with this disease can do. This is what you're destined. You're destined to be in a wheelchair. You're destined to be in leg braces. And that's really where their mindset was. And so even growing up, again, we never talked about it, but I would go, I'm a kid. I'm competitive, obviously. I like to do the best. I like to be the best. We would be in PE class or something like that, or, we can keep it swimming. When I was 16, I tried out for the Los Angeles County lifeguard, so pool lifeguards. I was a pool lifeguard for about 8 years, and I'm trying to learn how to do this egg beater kick with 0% nerve capacity from the knees down, so you can imagine how it's going. And I just cannot get this to save my life. I come home, and I'm like, this is some BS, man, like, what's going on here? And they always told me the same thing. They always said, look, however good you are right now or however bad you are right now, as long as you continue to practice 1,000%, I guarantee you'll get better than you currently are. And, from a young age, come home, kids are faster than me in school. I'm like, there's no way that this kid over here should be faster than me. You know what I'm saying? Like, that doesn't even make sense. Just keep practicing. I don't know if you'll ever beat that kid, but you'll be better than you are today. And that's really stuck with me throughout my whole life.
Have you always had this sort of resilience? Because I just imagine that, like, that's a pretty heavy thing to come across at age 10, and then of course throughout your life and your experience. But you seem like such a positive dude. So yeah, I mean, where does that come from?
Amen to that. Definitely I'd like to say I am my own man. Like, we all got to make choices. We all got to choose our own path at the same pace. Nobody's truly self-made. Like, a lot of the inner voices that I have inside me were instilled from a young age through my family. Like my faith in God, my faith in myself, my love for people, being nice, being courteous, being respectful. So I like to think that as much as my behavior and my talents and accomplishments and my vision and ambition obviously shine myself, they really reflect all the people that have poured into me and continue to pour into me.
You and you're very honest and authentic in yourself, and even a couple of chats we had in IG DMs, you're straight up. And so I feel I should be straight up right now. The conversation we've had for the last 20 minutes, I'm almost embarrassed that Brian, John, and I had to ask these questions about classifications of Paralympic swimming. We are like swimming nerds. We're hardcore swimming nerds. When I swam in Canada, in the 90s, when you went to trials, you also went to the Paralympic trials at the exact same time. They were conducted right after each other. There was the Paralympic trials and the Olympic trials. So we knew all the Paralympic athletes. We knew what classifications were. They were as much celebrated as anybody else was celebrated. And so I'm ashamed in the last 25 years since that, I haven't been exposed to that. And I encourage more countries to do that. Could you imagine being on deck at trials and you're at Omaha and Caleb just qualified for the 50 and Jamal just qualified for the 50 right afterwards? That's the way we're going to move forward. However, ashamedly, I was jealous when I saw some of these athletes qualify in the S10. There was an athlete called Benoit Hugh. Brilliant, one of the legends of the sport, S10 qualification. And I remember being jealous in my immature university self of like, oh, he just has one calf shorter than the other. And that was my, and that's how I perceived it. And it was a jealousy thing, immature thing. But it's a very important point that you made earlier. Never judge anybody for their classifications and their abilities. And I don't know, I just wanted to admit to that, but I just encourage us more to be more like some of the models and people like you driving our sport forward. That's all.
That's love, man. That's love. I know the people are going to eat that up, man. Thank you for sharing that, Brother Luke.
Cheers.
Yeah, I think thanks for saying that too, Luke, because yeah, I mean, honestly, I wasn't around paraswimming at all. From the only time in my swimming career was when I was an age grouper, and there was a visually impaired athlete who usually came to meets and swam the mile, and usually just distance events, and it would just, I would always see him on Sunday. He was at all the meets. But there was only usually one or maybe two people. And so and I think that's right to call that out. And I wanted to ask Jamal, so like it's I think somewhat of a recent change for the USOC and the Paralympic Committee to merge or at least by title and start referring to themselves as the USOPC. Do you feel like where do we stand right now in terms of like everybody being together, like Luke was calling out, like all on the same pool deck, all together, one team?
Excuse me. Within where do we stand, man? I don't know.
Yeah, honestly, yeah.
I don't know. I think that, I think athletes like myself, who's new, but also athletes who have been carrying this work for a long time, like, right? I'm sure you guys saw the Super Bowl ad with Jessica Tatiana Long, right? Athletes like her. I can name a few other ones, but athletes in the para space who are not only doing great work in the pool, but are also building their brand outside of the pool, right? Because all the attention that's on them is ultimately on, the stages that they compete on. So I think that's what I'm most optimistic about when we talk about, merging sport. Actually, it's funny that you say that because just last month I was in Texas at the Tier Pro Series. And because of COVID-19, right, the team, any member of the Team USA Paralympic team, right, whether you were A, B, or C team, as long as you had your minimum qualifying standard, you were able to go to this meet, which you would never have the opportunity to do otherwise, So I'm swimming in a backstroke heat with Ryan Murphy and Shane Casas. I'm swimming in a freestyle heat with I was in Texas. There were like super major freestylers there, but all these guys can burn. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So having the opportunity to compete with athletes that I would never share a heat with, let alone probably a pool deck. So that's one thing that's happened. I'm not sure if that's a plan to continue to intermingle and to mesh the spaces. Luke, I think what you said, like the way you were doing it in Canada is amazing. Do I foresee that happening, in America? I'm not sure. I guess Texas is a start. Obviously that was kind of a forced hand opportunity there. But yeah, I don't really know.
Jamal, you also African American Black swimmer who has a disability. How does the Black community, let's talk about stigmas and perceptions of the Paralympic community within the Black community versus the non-Black community. I think that's an important perception to have, especially with swimming. I mean, we talked to Giles Smith a few weeks ago about you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's bring this back into your world now too, not just Paralympic world, but also the African American Black swimming. That's another layer you have as well.
Yes, sir. Yeah. I think the biggest thing is that, number one, like I feel like only up until the last 6 months has it not been taboo to talk about the Black experience without it being anti anyone else. Like without that being the perception. Right. So that's a big thing. That's a big thing. Like especially just number one, as a man, right? Like, as men, I think we tend to just, it's the way it is. You suck it up, you keep it pushing, like you're here to do what you're here to do, and that's all there is to it. So for the first time really start to feel like, me, I kind of have a bad habit of being honest, but for it to be socially acceptable, to really speak truth to power in so many, really like PWI spaces, was pretty wild. And it, it inspired a little bit of hope. But at the same time, just having a brief history of not only America, but having a history of, the modern world as it dates back to like the 16 and 1400s, like we're living in a post-imperialistic, post-colonialism world where from pretty much back then when the initial banks were started, it's been pretty much anti-Blackness, like obviously, we're going to get into the drowning rates in the Black community and my organization working to teach 1 million people to swim. 3,500 people drown in America every year. This is a first world country. Most of those people are Black. The second most affected demographic is Hispanic. The third most affected demographic is Caucasian and Anglo. But what a lot of people miss, is that America is still just the 1%. Around the world every year, over 350,000 people drown accidentally.
That's right.
Primarily in Black and brown countries. So what we're really talking about is, not something that Brian, John, and Luke are guilty of as being white, but as Brian, John, Luke, Jamal, and everyone else is guilty of, just in part of the indoctrination that is culture of, just kind of this subversive anti-Black element. So just growing up in that space is like you adapt. You either adapt or you get swallowed up and you don't make it. And that's the ugly truth of it.
Definitely. And we were talking with, I think it was Giles, and he was saying, just there's not always the, blanket or obvious things that people say that bring out this racism or this, that you're not included in the sport. He mentioned people saying, oh, why don't you play basketball? Why don't you play football? I'm sure being a 6'4" guy that's well built. Did you experience these situations as well?
Absolutely. I mean, I definitely can speak to one, I don't want to embarrass anybody because I don't think if I thought it was malicious, it would be a different story. I don't think it was malicious, but like I've definitely experienced a coach on a very high level. I'm in their practice. They come to me and they say, Jamal, you got such big hands. it seems like you should have just played basketball. Why didn't you do that? And I'm like, I mean, I don't know. I kind of thought big hands would be good for paddles.
They didn't say that
But
about
hey,
Ian Thorpe. Why did you go play soccer? Ian Thorpe, you have big feet. No, they didn't say that about him.
right. Like maybe I should do this, maybe I should do that, but not that my experience, and again, you got to understand, like, I was born and raised in Southern California, like I'm not living in the South. I'm not living in Britain, in some of the projects in Britain. I'm not experiencing what these people are experiencing in certain regions in South Africa. So even my perspective, and with respect, Brother Giles' perspective, are going to be extremely, extremely privileged perspectives. So I'm always careful to even, talk too much about it, because I think it takes away from just how systemic and broad the issue itself is on the mindset of our communities.
How many Black Paralympic swimmers are there that you know
On
of?
Team USA, there are two. Myself and a young brother named Lawrence, who is an S14 with a cognitive impairment.
Mm-hmm. What's your outreach like to other the underserved communities of the world? We know we're going to talk about that in a second, but the underserved, able-bodied communities, I should say,
Absolutely. So, really, my chief of staff, Gigi Marsh, shout out Gigi. I'm the face of the organization, but there's a team. Nothing gets done. It takes a village. Right now, we're actually, you guys are getting the tea right now. You can't count on this. Everything is working, right? But right now we're organizing with both the Colombian Paralympic and Olympic swimming organizations because, they're experiencing a lot of accidental dress down in Colombia. They're a part of that, 300,000 to 1 million people that drown every year around the world. So really trying to start to grow some political roots in other countries. Really get our curriculum that's designed, to help people no matter where they are in the world with some basic items. So I would say, as far as the international community goes, that is the most developed. We got some other things I want to tell you, but I can't tell you just yet.
All right. Well, we'll definitely stay tuned for those other things. But, getting back to, like you said, your guys' philosophy, whether you have pool or water access or not. Because this is huge. Because, we were talking with Ratty Gaines. He was saying he gets a text every time someone in the U.S. drowns. But like you said, it's not even just the U.S. We're the 1%. So being able to have the curriculum without any water access is huge. So I'd love to learn more about how you develop that and how you continue to look on improving it.
Absolutely. Thank you, Brother John. That's a great question, man. So in 2018, when I made my first Paralympic national team, much like this man behind me, right? Great inspiration, more than an athlete has become a big movement these days, right? I knew for a fact, like, look, this is my career. I dropped out of college to go be a freaking pro swimmer. So I plan on winning medals. Like, I plan on being a winner. All right. That's just the nuts and bolts of it. At the same pace, I'm about purpose. So I have to be able to offer something more, not only to my community, not only to the people who have invested their time, energy, and money into me, but to the world at large, something more than just seeing this pretty smiling face with some gold medals in his teeth, right? And with a background in marketing, that's when we came up with the idea, you know what? Heck, let's teach 1 million people how to swim. We started to dig into that more, and that's when I actually learned how real this problem actually was, right? How small of a number 1 million people actually is in the grand scope of, accidental drownings around the world. So we started ground one. We're like, okay, we need to build a curriculum that's going to face 2 primary problems. The first one is going to be individuals with aquaphobia, either individuals who identify as aquaphobic or have family members who identify as aquaphobic. And so from 2018 on through 2020, that was all of our R&D, research and development. How do we create a system to fast track these students from can't swim, I'm afraid of water, to can swim a basic freestyle stroke across 15 to 20 yards as quickly as possible? And I think that's kind of what sets us apart from other organizations. Lots of organizations do cost-reduced swim lessons, which is necessary, 100% necessary. But, again, just kind of keeping that ear to the streets, we started to find that some of the larger barriers, it's not so much about the money. Obviously the money is a component, but like number one, if somebody doesn't know how to swim, chances are the parents don't know how to swim and their parents don't know how to swim, right? So how do we now overcome this psychological trauma? That's a big part of our curriculum. Number two is, right, people don't actually have access. Somehow it's the people that don't have consistent access to pools or calm bodies of water that find themselves at a pool or a calm body of water someday and tragedy strikes, right? So how can we fast track that learning process? And that's what really, drove the heart of the bowl, bench, bucket curriculum. We figured these are going to be household items where we can teach proper breathing technique. We can begin to teach an elementary breaststroke. And I feel like even people in a third world country, as long as they have access to water, right, and water itself is not a scarce resource, they'll be able to get a receptacle, they'll be able to get some water, and they'll be able to start to learn these skills along this 5-hour course time. Now, something you asked me about that I'm very excited to announce is how are we improving upon this system, right? And that's a big thing. Like I said, we have a 5-hour course time. Up until this point, we've been teaching people about 2.5 to 3 hours outside of the water, and then we bring them into the pool for roughly about a 2 to 2.5 hour stint, and they can swim. Again, on average, some people happens faster. Some people, it takes more time, right? It's all about establishing an industry standard here, though. What my team is looking into now is really integrating more technology into the experience. Obviously, this may not reach every far-reaching corner of the world just yet, but it doesn't take a rocket scientist to believe that more people have access to smartphones than they do pools, right? So we're actually working on a partnership right now with Google Cardboard and some of their affiliates to begin to collect thousands of cardboard VR sets with the intention of using the YouTube VR feature to create pretty much this, on a very fundamental level, immersive experience. So once the students have mastered the basic skills on the land, bowl, bench, bucket, they then come into these pre-recorded videos where they practice these skills again, only now they're seeing it in first person before we bring them to the water. So obviously there's still going to be, a buffer zone, but the crazy goal and vision that we have is, developing this system to the point where we can get people, to learn how to swim, and then we bring them to the pool and they can pretty much already swim within an hour. So we've already conquered these, psychological and emotional fields. We've already, helped them master the most basic skills, right? You guys know how important breathing is to swimming, right? It's everything. And even experience some of it firsthand in a first person setting. So that's what I'm most excited about. That's our big project and undertaking internally for 2021. So, we're working on that where we're fishing our partnerships and yeah.
I was going to say, kudos, dude. I mean, I'm from a third world country, lots of drownings. People live within 10 minutes of a body of water, river or sea. It's afraid. It's not in the culture. It's also alcohol and drinking at the beach, etc. Tons of stuff. My kids learned to swim in a bathtub. And it was taught by their godfather, George Bovels, who says, I taught my son, who became an Olympic medalist, to swim by wearing a scuba mask in the bathtub. It made him to be comfortable, to put his head underwater and enjoy being underwater and open up the world of the underwater. And George and then my kids would spend hours in the bathtub exploring the bathtub. So when they went to this pool and this water, no problem. Let's go underwater. So they don't panic underwater. Yep. And the learning curve of my children, Brian and John, you can talk to it. It has been exponential because of the comfort.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. And that's what we're hitting, that I think that's where the biggest gap in service is. People truly understanding, how important comfort is to skill acquisition, right? It's really hard to teach someone something new when all they can think about is how cold they are, how this is nothing like air, how all the horror stories they've heard from their parents. What if I slip? What if this? What if that? So you hit it right on the head there.
Yeah, what are you doing to influence pool temperatures worldwide, right?
We in Trinidad, we're good. We're fine. We're sorted. Jamal, how many David Curtis stories are we missing? David Curtis, to me, one of the most exciting swimmers on the planet right now.
Yeah.
Dude started to swim when he was 8 because his parents said, I am afraid that you'll drown. I don't want you to drown. Let's go to the YMCA and learn to swim. And the YMCA saw something in this young man. 10 years later, he's the 5th fastest swimmer on the planet.
Yo, no, you got to say one. Listen, shout out to the YMCA system.
Oh.
I think the YMCA honestly doesn't get enough. I learned that my mommy and me was in the YMCA. I came up in the YMCA.
I learned about the YMCA in Trinidad.
Right. So it's like, shout out. You got to shout them out. They're an amazing organization that they do amazing work in communities all over the world. So you got to give roses where roses are due. But yeah, man, DG he's a phenomenal talent, man. Well spoken, just a young guy and excited about his life. Excited, I just love to see, it's inspiring to me. I saw him on the podcast, and it's just good, man. Like, he's a kid, he's fast, but he's still, he's humble. It's not gone. It's not in his head. He's just enjoying the journey, enjoying the experience, and he's just so excited about what he doesn't know yet, right? Like, what's to come. I know predictions. I don't have any predictions about the Olympics. I don't have any predictions even about my next meet, man. Like, I'm just here to be me and to do the best I can and to enjoy this experience while it lasts. And I think something that we can all learn. We all forget that at times. So, yeah, shout out to him. Even Shane Casas, right? This guy, his father, with respect, I spoke to him. His father drowned. And that's how he got into swimming. His mother put him in the swim program and the YMCA. Now, right, this guy also, again, one of the top swimmers in the nation right now. All of these people, have these great opportunities. So, yeah.
Talk to him next week. I'm looking forward to talking to him now. Dude.
Oh, well, there it is. Yeah, man. Yeah. Well, forgive me. I know it's not something that he talks about a lot publicly, so I hope
it's
yeah.
Hey. Yeah, I hope I didn't overstep any bounds there with his personal, but it inspired me. So that's why I spoke.
Well, I was going to ask you about who inspired you, because Brian's at one time teammate Cullen Jones was the person who David Curtis saw himself on TV. He saw somebody look like him and be the person where he can imagine his dreams be.
That's a fact, man. That's a big fact, and I love Cullen. Like, Cullen and I, we chop it up. He's definitely a great mentor. I love the things that he's done just for the progression of the sport, inclusion and things like that. But I didn't have the same experience of DC. I didn't have the same experience of David Curtis. When I was coming up, I wasn't looking up to Cullen Jones. Like, obviously, I knew of him a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Like, I wasn't looking up to, a Maritza McClendon. The fact that I kind of can't name anybody else after those two, right, kind of probably speaks to why I wasn't even really looking up to them. I'm looking up to people from other sports. I'm looking up to people in the music industry. I'm looking up to people that, that there's more representation of individuals that look like me, that I feel connect to my struggle. And not to say that these individuals don't, but just to say that, it's like finding a needle in a haystack. Yeah.
So you're a professional. How do you manage your training along with all the work with your organization?
Oh, that's a great question, man. Schedule. Scheduling is everything. Like, I got 3 huge calendars, and I got 3 journals with calendars in them, day by day schedules, and that's what I rock with. It's taken me 5 years to really get a good system down. Rome was not built in a day, as they say, right? But at the same pace, also, listen, you guys know this, right? How many pro swimmers are paying the bills off of pro swimming, right? So it's necessary, right? Yeah, this many, right? How many Paralympic swimmers are paying the bills off of Paralympic swimming, right? Like, an even smaller amount.
Yeah.
So it's a necessity. It's an absolute necessity, and I love the challenge of it. I love the challenge of you then swimming. For me, swimming is not the end game. For me, swimming is not the end goal. For me, swimming is a platform. It's a tool. I love it. Obviously, I take great pride in it. I work hard as heck for it, like I'm sure so many people do. But in this world, especially as a pro athlete, you got to be dynamic, okay? You got to be more than just this person who can put a ball in a hoop, who can put a ball in the end zone. Mind you, if you make it to that professional level, you will be compensated slightly better. But ultimately, you really got to build the character. It's important to, have a foundation that even after the Paralympic cycle, when Jamal Hill isn't the hot news, even after the Super Bowl, when Tom Brady isn't the hot news, even after the NBA championships when LeBron James isn't the hot news, that you have enough skills and knowledge and internal infrastructure to be able to support your family and live the life and inspire others the way you want to.
Steph Curry has a great ad out. One of my favorite athletes. It's Black History Month is not February, it's not March, it's not April, it's not May, it's not June. It should be every month. Dude, you're a superhero. You have this.
That's way too easy for you to say things like that.
No, hang tight. You have this ability in you that you've embraced and you've used to your full extent. I want you to talk to that person of color in an underserved community. Let's say in SoCal, who is dealing with an ability that he doesn't quite understand, and it scares him or her, scares her, and loves the sport of swimming.
Yeah,
you are the superhero there, Fred. But it took you a while to get to that journey, to get to that place where you are. You got, what words do you have? The journey that you took and where you're at, because that's if this show helps that one person, I'm happy, man.
Yeah, that's a blessing. The first thing I'm gonna say is I'm still on the ground level right now. So you watch this podcast and you are that person. The best thing you could do is hit me up. Okay, you need to connect with me on Instagram. That's probably the best way. SwimUpHill. Go to my website. Go to my organization's website. Myself or my team, we'll get back to you. Like, I hop on the phone with people all the time. I'm a busy guy, but I make time for the things that are important, near and dear to my heart. So if this is you that Luke just described, you got a friend in Jamal, you can talk to me. I may not have been all those places, but I've been some of them. And we could just dialogue about it and be a mentor and be a friend. I think that's the biggest thing. If you decide that's not the path you want to go, you don't necessarily, you're a little bit shy or something like that. I think the best thing I can say to you is like, man, on this journey, it's going to be a lot of times where you have a choice to make that anyone other than you would call it absolutely crazy, dumb, insane choice, okay? But if what you're doing resonates with your heart, mind, and spirit, you need to go with it. If you're not sure if it resonates with that, I wish I had a how-to guide to just make you be able to get it after you listen to this podcast. It doesn't work like that, unfortunately. But if you continue to try and you focus on it and you go through these experiences and you're willing enough to just take a step back and be like, man, what did I learn about myself from this? What really matters to me? What really inspires and touches my heart? You're going to get clear on that, man. Again, you're talking to a guy I was a physics man. I went to college for physics, D3 school. I dropped out as a junior in college, 1 year left to go be a pro swimmer, completely unranked, completely unknown, knowing that it's very unlikely that I will ever make a living or a profession.
Man.
Right? Like, absolute crazy. When I write it down, it's absolutely crazy. But I believed. I just felt it. I was like, whether it happens or not, the journey is going to be enough for me. It's going to be enough. If I don't do the journey, I'll always be like, I should have did that. And that's the last thing you want, man. Life is too short. When I die, these medals won't go in the casket. Well, I guess they can go in the casket, but I won't be celebrating wherever I go next. It happens to everybody. So just try and enjoy life. It's going to be hard times. It's going to be challenges. But my favorite thing to always say is, like, you got to stay down for the come up, man. If you believe in something and it's worth doing, it's going to be freaking hard. Like, life has ups and downs. You know what I'm saying? Like, look at all these guys on this podcast right now. Everybody here has had a bad day. Raise your hand if you ever wanted to have a bad day. Right. Nobody's hands go up. So that's why it seems like such shit luck when you actually have one. All right.
Yeah. All right. Hey, we got a couple of rapid fire questions for you.
All right, that's it. I love this.
All right. What's the hardest race in swimming?
50-meter freestyle.
Olympic gold or world record?
Olympic gold.
Greatest para swimmer of all time?
Jamal Hill.
If you got signed by an ISL team, who would it be?
Cali Condors.
All right, I know it's all about the journey, but you got to give us goals for Tokyo.
Oh yeah, goals for man. You guys are gonna kick me for this, but goal number 1 is make the team, man. Like one step at a time. Nothing is locked in. I gotta make the team. This is my first go round. I'm hoping not to shit the bed, but goal number 1 is just to make the team. If you had asked me this 2 years ago, I probably would hit you with I'm coming home with 5 gold medals, man. Like that's just what's gonna happen. But life and experiences, they've humbled me. Like you can only control what you can control, man. Like you guys know how it is. Swimming is a fine sport, and it could be my best day and somebody else's worst day, or it could be vice versa. So making the team, representing my country, cheering on my teammates, doing the best I can do in that water, and wherever it ends up, you know what I'm saying? We throwing a party regardless.
All right, let's give everybody listening the playbook. Where can they find you specifically, and where can they donate?
For sure. SwimUpHill. Just hit Google, SwimUpHill. We freaking run that SEO. SwimUpHill. SwimUpHill.com is going to take you to my personal site and the SwimUpHill Sportswear Marketplace. SwimUpHill.org is going to take you to our nonprofit site. The website looks amazing. We're doing amazing work. We're teaching a million people how to swim. So if you want to donate or get involved, either with expertise, gear, money, it's all necessary. Go to swimuphill.org. Other than that, you can connect with us primarily on Instagram. Again, just hit in SwimUpHill for Jamal or hit up SwimUpHill, DOTORG, for the nonprofit organization. All right.
Jamal, you're the man. We all donated. So everybody listening, it's your turn. Yes. Thanks so much for hanging out. Thanks so much for hanging out, Jamal. It was fun.
Absolutely.
See you next time.
Thank you guys for having me.
That's it for this episode of Social Kick Podcast. We'll see you guys. Hey, everybody. Thanks for hanging out with us. If you're enjoying Social Kick, tell your friends about it. And be sure to tell us what you liked by leaving a comment and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at The Social Kick Podcast. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel, The Social Kick. And you can find all of our content on our website at thesocialkick.com.